Welcome to New Mexico Black Rifle Operators Union. I'm your host, Sean. Today, let's get a New Mexico update in for New Mexico Ledge update. So far, what we're seeing is, and I say we because I'm using New Mexico Shooting Sports Authority, some of the things I saw which a day or two ago aren't there anymore. I saw a bill, a Senate bill, that was a mirror of what House Bill 101 is, and it's not in the current list that I saw. What we need to talk about is what is currently being pushed right now and what has cleared committee. The first thing being that has passed committee, that's the first step in the process, is House Bill 9. If you're not familiar with House Bill 9, this is the one I talked about where it's about safe storage of firearms for anyone who's in the 2A. Now, this is the easy, low-hanging fruit that says you did something. I made a comment where I should have finished out in this consecutive podcast since then. What I think will pass, this is one of them I think that they'll pass for sure. The other one I think that they're going to go after, which seems to be conspicuously absent in the Senate bill list, is the 21 or older people to purchase firearms. Now, I have never liked that idea, especially if we're going to send 18-year-olds or 19-year-olds to go fight wars for us and they're capable of taking fully automatic machine guns that we're not allowed in the civilian world, but they're allowed to use them to prosecute a war or to use them while they're on the job, so to speak. Why shouldn't they be able to allow them? If we can send them there to die and die for our country, it makes no sense to me that they can't have a beer or have a joint, to be bluntly honest, or anything else they want short of, what they shouldn't get. But what it looks like is House Bill 9 has cleared the committee meeting and it's got a due pass. So, recommendations. So, what happens is in New Mexico's parlance and most city or state governments, what happens is they go to committee to see what needs to be changed. They look at the language of it. They see if there's anything that anybody has some really hard stops on. I'm surprised no one had any hard stops, but at the same time, I'm not, because I really don't trust any of the guys in the government, even the ones that are supposedly on our side, and that's because of what's happened during the COVID stuff, and especially in New Mexico. New Mexico is still living under executive orders from our Führerin, Grisham. It looks like there's some people that are trying to call around on the carpet. It also looks like the Senate part of the roundhouse seems to be a little more conservative leaning. Here's my proof. I never thought I would see the day that someone would push constitutional carry in New Mexico. It is long past overdue. There are 25 states in the union that I saw last that have constitutional carry. If you don't know what that means, New Mexico has what's called a shall issue policy for concealed carry holders. That means you have to go pass a class. Once you pass the class and you've proven competency with a firearm, which I really don't have a problem with that per se. I think if you're going to carry, you should have some training, but I think that shouldn't be incumbent upon you unless you want it. Okay? Specifically, I think it's a good idea if you're going to carry a firearm that you're competent with it. Okay. So what does this do? Okay. Since we have a shall issue, it means that they can't necessarily deny you a permit unless you don't pass your background check. You have to pass an NCIC background check, so a NICS background check, just like you would for a firearm. It's a little more extensive because they have to get your fingerprints and they go through a federal background check, I believe. I've passed all that, and I had to pass that when I worked for K-12s. That makes more sense to me than it does for guns. If you're going to be checking for something, let's find those pedos or Chester the molester guys and keep them out of schools. Okay? With that, two more bills were introduced. Senate Bill 171. So Senate Bill 171 is an add-on, or is a mirror of House Bill 101. So it's changed its numbers, is what I've seen. Now, what that means is that they're going after assault weapons. Specifically in this parlance, they're using the stupid moniker of assault pistol. There's no such thing as an assault pistol. I'm sorry. I've been in the 2A, a gun owner, a gun user since I was about 4 years old because of my parents and my dad specifically. And I can tell you that I've never heard of anything called an assault pistol. I've heard of machine pistols. Those are usually the type of thing that they're talking about. The gun that was used in California was first off illegal in California, has been forever. They don't make the gun anymore. It is basically a Mac 10, but in a 9mm, so it's a Mac 11. Most people in the sporting community think they're kind of cool, but they don't really own a lot of them. There's not a lot of call for them. That being said, it doesn't mean you shouldn't be able to own it, okay? When they say assault pistol in New Mexico, what they're going after is anyone with a threaded barrel for suppressors. That's one. Anyone who's using a quote-unquote extended magazine. So anyone that's using a Glock magazine like a Glock 17 and a Glock 26, that technically would qualify as a machine pistol or an assault pistol in this bill. They're going after Senate Bill 101 or 171 and House Bill 101. What they're going for is an assault weapons ban in New Mexico. I didn't get to read too much into it yet because here's where I'm old and crusty when it comes to New Mexico law, New Mexico Senate stuff, and the Roundhouse in general. I know that it's going to take time to get through here. This is the first month. They have until the beginning of March before they finish up what's going on in the Roundhouse. They have 60 days. That's where we'll start the latter part of probably the middle of February. Beginning of March is when you'll start seeing people protesting in New Mexico, at the Roundhouse specifically, because that's when they're trying to get things passed as rapidly as they can. There's a huge docket right now, a lot of it around K-12 schools and funding for it, and reducing graduation requirements, which I'm kind of behind a little bit. Having worked in K-12, I know that graduation requirements are kind of ridiculous for the modern society. I saw a lot of cool things where they're talking about, I would support, and I would hope these guys do, for mentorship and alternatives to college. Lots of tax stuff, specifically around cannabis, more licensing stuff around cannabis, more licensing around tobacco, more taxing around tobacco, more labeling of stuff like that. Typical stuff you would see in New Mexico Roundhouse. Now, what that leads to is the governor has made a call, basically, for everything that is on the docket right now. And how we win in the Second Amendment for the Second Amendment in New Mexico is first by supporting groups like New Mexico Shooting Sports Association. These guys have been in the fight forever. I can't advocate enough for these guys, especially, they don't even know I exist, I don't think. They've seen me at protest, I'm sure, because I've seen them. But to them, I haven't been really anything of note. When I say that, when I tried to get New Mexico Black Rifle Operators Union into New Mexico to protest at the Roundhouse, there's a problem with conservatives. We all had jobs. I don't anymore, so I'm going to be more of a thorn until I find something to get by until I start my business, as I said. But conservatives have this one problem. And it's not a problem, it's a good thing that they have a job and they work. But it leads to you can't speak on the House floor or in the Roundhouse when they change crap around because you have to make it a day just to go down there and protest, especially if you're from one of the farther corners of New Mexico. And they do that on purpose because they know if we get in there, we protest, we get our say, even for a little bit amount of time that they're going to give us. What ends up happening is it slows down all those other bills that they want and have to get passed in their mind. I'm okay with the government being snarled. I'm okay with them not getting past all this stuff because tax rates in New Mexico are ridiculously high considering what we're getting. If you've driven on New Mexico roads, if you're a resident of New Mexico or you've ever passed through the state, tell me our roads are A1. They're not even, hell, we have places in New Mexico with lots of residents that aren't even paved. Okay? Internet here in New Mexico is rare in some places. They have to use satellite internet or cell phone internet. That's how great our state government works. That we had the height of the COVID stuff. We were all locked down. We couldn't have kids come to school. Told them to do online school. And probably half didn't have internet, especially the poorer people in New Mexico. And New Mexico is one of the poorest states in the union when it comes to how much you make for a living. Why is that? Well, 70, 80 years of Democratic rule, just like California, has its effects. Elections have consequences. We're facing it right now. The biggest problem we have is just like the rest of the union, the country, people keep voting for stupid people. They don't look at the issues, don't see what the problems are, and continue to vote accordingly. And if you don't believe what I'm talking about, look what Jim McCarthy said today. What McCarthy said. That was interesting. He came out and said, we're not putting these people on the Intelligence Committee. And why did he say that? Because these people didn't hold their mouth shut. You're on the one committee that's in charge of keeping the country safe, and you can't be trusted to do that. But they keep getting reelected because Californians don't pay attention to what the hell is on the ballot, and it's name recognition. That's why I'm all for pulling the D and the R off of and the L off of any of the ballot the ballot itself where it associates party with the candidate, because maybe it would cause people to read and actually do some homework on what these people are. Now, I have to say that I've worked for the Bureau of Elections in San Juan County. I have said this before. I do not believe elections in New Mexico are sketchy. You have too much you'd have to rig an election. You'd have to rig in San Juan County proper. Maybe there's 25, 23, maybe 30 or more precincts. You'd have to rig every one of those precincts, every one of those machines, even at the point where they read them, because there's a chain of custody for everything. Unlike Arizona, and I say that and watch there'll be some county that tells me they didn't have the chain of custody. There was one that had some issues, but that had to deal with the county clerk in the area. The county clerks in most of rural New Mexico are absolutely against election fraud. They're about election integrity. They pride themselves on that. They teach that to their people. They teach them not to be biased. I can say that firsthand. This is one of those anecdotal notes I have, having worked with Fran Hanhart and Debbie Holmes and the new county clerk, Tanya Shelby, in San Juan County. These people take it to the bank, and if you question their elections, you better have the damn receipts. Case in point, Aztec had a municipal election, or let's say a bond election. No, it was a 2-mil election. And the state had mandated that they would do this by mail. And they didn't get the election results that they expected. That's because of how it was worded on the ballot, to be honest. Then they asked for it again, and it barely passed. Now, Tanya pushed back on that. Tanya Shelby pushed back and said, hey, if you don't like the election results, run a better election. That's the truth. But you see, time and time again, people being elected. Let's talk about Grisham. Grisham had no business getting reelected. I don't know that Ron Keddy would have been a better candidate or was a better candidate or a better person, because he was kind of a leftist in my view, but he was better than Grisham. And I would take a ham sandwich over Grisham right now. Now, I have a lot of issues with her because I got to see firsthand the slide kids had in their mental health and in the classroom because of the COVID mandate bullcrap. I had to see my dad go to the hospital, end up going to the ER 8-9 times just to get a diagnosis before he could see his actual doctor during the height of the COVID stuff. By then, it was too late. Stage 4 cancer got him. So do I have an axe to grind with Grisham and the state people? Absolutely. I am absolutely biased because I've had to live under their authoritarian boot for the most of my life. Now, a lot of people say, why won't you move? Because unless you live in the Rio Grande corridor, that's not a reflection of New Mexico. You cannot come to Northwest New Mexico and tell me that this is a Democrat stronghold or that there aren't good, strong, hardworking Americans that are just trying to get by through the system and the system keeps fighting them. That's why New Mexico Black Rifle Operators Union started up, was to protest and say, hey, wake the hell up. Now, I join New Mexico Shooting Sports Association in the protests every time I see them flag it. I'm even willing to side with the devil, the NRA. And the reason why I would say the NRA is the devil, I was a lifetime member. They threw every gun owner under the bus the minute that Trump asked them to. And you can like Trump all you want. The Orange Man was the only one that passed any gun control between Obama and now Biden. Biden's trying hard to beat Obama's record. Obama talked a big game, but he never got anything passed. He never got the ATF involved to change rules like Trump did. And now what Trump did set the precedent for the pistol brace ban. So tomorrow is this podcast will drop on Rumble, on iHeart, and all the audio platform stuff. Friday, I reserve for audio-only podcasting for the people that originally got me into podcasting. Like, share, Rumble, subscribe, and most importantly, be great. Because we have a long slog ahead of us in the 2A community.